Wait a second. Is the CPI tomorrow going to be bullish? There's something that we're going to go over right here towards the end of this video, something to do with TLT. The reasoning here, we could see CPI actually come in good for the market, meaning we might see some bullishness come in. So make sure to tune into that last bit. But for now, we're going to get into some technical analysis for the SPY Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, NVIDIA, AMD, and Meta today. And it's just interesting that as people expect inflation to come in much hotter, this is starting to pop up. And we're going to talk about that at the end, but let's get into the SPY. Now, something interesting on the daily side of things for the SPY, we saw that selling come in, but we are able to buy back up above both of our 5 and our 20-day moving average. We did not get that 5 to cross that 20, so it looks like we're not testing that bottom Bollinger just yet. Now, what were we talking about? Well, pay attention to when this 2-hour curls up. We did curl up briefly here, but then we notice we drop off. We'll go into those 30-minute charts in a moment, and now we could see some positivity. Going into tomorrow, if this wants to go positive on the 2-hour cross up, positive territory, we can see that positive move. Every single time that we have come down towards this center line here on the MACD, and then we see that cross up in positive territory, we see a very good positive move. And that very well could happen right now as we buy back above those moving averages. So we need to find a point higher where we could pay attention. So tomorrow, the good part is we have those daily expected moves, these red lines here, okay? 526.16 to the upside and 512.44 to the downside. This is not just my guess or anything like that. This is what the options market has priced in for tomorrow. And I'm just going to tell you right now, this is a pretty damn big expected move for one day. So we are expecting some kind of big price move tomorrow or some kind of volatility tomorrow, and that's what we'll have to pay attention. Remember, we could see that move up and then see that ripped away by the FOMC later in the day. We are going to be live twice tomorrow, okay? We're going to be live a little bit in the morning, and then when the FOMC minutes comes out, we're going to be live for that as well. So we're going to take a little break towards the afternoon and then come back strong for that FOMC minutes. But I just wanted you to pay attention, because if we do get a move up here and that fails, we actually could set up some kind of divergence at this level on the RSI and MACD at the same time, really close to negative territory, okay? Now, I do think that we could see some prolonged strength out of this because we are opening up, before the market we actually get that data. So we could see some kind of gap up or gap down when that happens. We'll have to pay attention if we do get outside of these these daily expected moves. You have a 68% chance to land in this zone and a 32% chance to see something a little bit crazier. So if you gap below this area, you can then use it as resistance. If you gap above this area, you can use it as support to head higher. But you know that in this area, you do have that 68% chance to land down here. If we get really excited this week and start to get outside of this weekly, well, then we have a 68% chance for that to drop. And we do have bank earnings as well. So let's keep that in mind. Even if we see some good news over the next day or so, we have PPI the next day. And then the day after that, we do have some big bank earnings. Now, the 30-minute here told you to get in and get out, get in, get out, right? That's what we were talking about. We said this in yesterday's video. The most likely thing to happen, well, I thought we would come and test this low. Now, we held up at that daily expected move. The daily expected move was right here. So pay attention to those daily expected moves. Very good for profit taking, right? We actually came down to it like this. We take our profit. We see that bounce. Very, very good trading there. Trading like water. That's what we like to see. But this here is what we were talking about, seeing if it creates some kind of divergence down here. Now, you didn't necessarily create that divergence, but once you see this cross down, negative territory right here, you should not be taking any kind of upside. You actually should be taking the downside to that daily expected move. And then we hit it, you take the other trade this way. Now we're seeing it cross up and maybe going positive soon. So now you're seeing this create a high. Now, is this some kind of higher low at that point? And do we break through? Are we able to beat this one? That's what's going to be talked about tomorrow, as long as we get some good news. Remember, we do not know what that data is. No one knows what that data is except for Nancy Pelosi and her husband. So unless you have their phone number, I highly suggest we react to that data and keep those stops close, just like I did today when I took some trades. Now, if we go into the Qs, similar thing, right? It's just there wasn't a great trade setup here. Just because you didn't get that weakening bar right up in this area to really cross down in negative territory right away. So you kind of had to get in maybe at this one, and that's just a little shaky. Really, my strategy, you would get in at this bar, but we didn't see that lowness. We were already coming down into the daily expected move for the SPY, so you could just assume the Qs were going to hold up here. crosses back up. Well, did that cross on the 2-hour? That's what we're really paying attention to. Look at that. It was able to cross again. So if you were trading the 2-hour here, maybe you were in, you were out, and now you're back in, and now the upside looks pretty juicy here. If we're able to curl back up, well, what happens every single time we get close to the center line or a little below it and we go up into positive territory? Boom. That positivity really comes in once we get into positive territory up here on this MACD. So pay attention to that for the Qs. The levels that you want to pay attention to the upside here, 449.46 to the upside and 435.06 to the downside. Okay, so I wanted you to pay attention to this because you're noticing that the daily expected move is getting really close to our weekly expected move up here. So this area up here can be some good resistance. So if we get there really quickly, just pay attention because we could see that fade. We could see FOMC rip that away. So just pay attention if price gets up here. We will have some resistance in this little zone. And then maybe we want to land back in here like we do 68% of the time. So I would just pay attention to that. Maybe 1 second, we just want to see where we're at on the daily scale. Well, this thing crossed down. It actually came down almost towards bottom Bollinger. We even lost the 50 that one day. This is the type of selling that will come in once we get that bad news that actually wakes people up, brings them back to reality, and says, hey, this is not a healthy economy. We are not going to have a soft landing. It is not on the table for me at this point. But right now, buyers stepping in, able to close above both of those moving averages. So if you're a swing trader, right, beat down, buy back up, maybe you're waiting for like a green bar or something like that, but we can see that extension. So we could see this on the daily scale turn up this MACD. What's the thing about this MACD on the daily scale? It's still positive. But will that just create some kind of small divergence right here that gets you really, really close to negative territory? This is when you want to be paying attention to these divergences at a point where they can flip that trend to negative. This is really when we have to be paying attention. You have those divergences on the RSI and the MACD at the same time. We can see how wonky it is on the daily scale. And when you see this, you know there's some kind of manipulation or stupidity going on, maybe a little bit of both. And that's why we just want to pay attention. Now, going forward, though, you do have different kinds of trades setting up. You have Apple on the daily scale here, still crossed on this MACD. Even in negative territory, this is still telling you that the momentum can go up from here because it hasn't crossed over on this MACD in negative territory yet. So what we wanted to do is just show you the trade setup we were talking about live. Okay, we were talking about this 2-hour, giving you a triple divergence, giving you a big divergence across the board, right? And then a bunch of little ones right here. So you do have a divergence between this point and these lows. You have a divergence between this point and these lows, and you have a divergence in the nearest price action telling you that this should probably go up from here. At least Apple's momentum is dying out with some good news. It can see a strong move. It's really been bottled up for a little bit. Now we're going to see an expansion. So I want to pay attention to when I could get into this. And if you're looking at this in real time, the 30-minute did give you some entry points here. Because we have these divergences on the 30-minute, we can take an entry point on this bar. We can say, hey, this fell back down. Let me look at a 15-minute and get back in when that curls up again. It's just about to go positive here. So if this goes positive, that's when that good move will come in. And I can tell you at that point, I'm going to be paying attention to my weekly expected moves over on Patreon. So if you want weekly expected moves, good for profit taking, good for trade setups, and we do give trade setups on Patreon. You can go down in the link in the description and join us. We're doing some good stuff over there. Some people finding some very good trades, taking advantage of these trade setups, and this is one of them. Looks like Apple says it wants to be bullish tomorrow, which tells you maybe CPI isn't going to come in very hot. So we have to pay attention. I'm going to tell you about TLT and what it's doing at the end of this video, so stay with us here. Tesla, this is a strong move. This is a very, very strong move for Tesla. But when we were making this move, we actually called this yesterday or 2 days ago saying this is most likely going to come up, retest this in some way, or come retest 180.92, and then look out if there's some kind of divergence. Well, you do have that divergence, but notice this, cup, handle. What if this thing just goes ballistic? I mean, what if the daily side of things, or I think it's the 2-hour, has a bunch of little divergences in here, right? So we see these divergences for the double bottom. We see this divergence here in the near price action. And now we see that on the RSI at the same time. So we can see a strong move. Now, if we're able to take out this high, well, the 2-hour, I really want to see if that daily's rolling up. Guess what? We rejected the cross, which means we're able to stay really close to positive territory. What if we see a big upward move for Tesla before earnings? That's what I'm going to pay attention to. What if we see some kind of big move up and then see that crash right back down once we start to get the earnings from those banks and things like that on Friday. So we're going to be paying attention to a lot of things, but it looks like some trades might set up to the downside. We see those setups to the upside right now for Tesla, Amazon, or for Tesla and Apple. But will they create some kind of divergence or anything like that in the future, or will this just roll back down in negative territory? We can pay attention to that. If it just goes up for a little bit for a few days here, goes positive, and just rolls back down, well, you're going to be rolling back down in negative territory, okay? So pay attention to that because this is still a downward trend. But if we want to see a strong move, I would expect us to go up all the way up to this zone up here that's rejected from a few times. So we could be seeing Tesla hit 205 over the next week if we get some good news with CPI. But remember, we have to be aware. Be ready to react. Keep those stops close because we don't know those numbers, and CPI easily could be a bad number for the market. And I know my stops are very, very close right now. Amazon going forward, just wanted to point out this thing. The momentum here is still just dying out. So this is the weirdness of the market right now. You have Apple and Tesla that look like they want to make strong moves to the upside, but you have Amazon telling you, hey, I'm tapped out here. Sure, I'm crossed on this MACD. It's positive, right? I'm in positive territory, but I'm already getting to overbought territory. I have divergences all across this, divergence here on the daily, and then I have a bunch of divergences on the 30-minute. Now, the 2-hour, something I'm paying attention to here, if it gets some kind of, you just see it, it looks like it's really just been hovering at the top side here of the RSI, not able to cross that center line of definitively on the RSI. Once that happens, we most likely see some downside. But right now, the 30-minute is scooping up right by the center line, right? So the center line here telling you that Amazon could see another strong move up, and that's where I'll be paying attention to my weekly expected move for Amazon. So the weekly expected moves at the top side of those are going to be very important over the next couple of days. NVIDIA, at first glance, this looks like, hey, it needs to start to go down to lower levels, hit that 50, and it very well could if we get that bad news from the CPI, but what if we actually roll back up here? That would be very, very interesting. It would trick a lot of people, as we did just test bottom Bollinger while that 5 crosses the 20. Now, we were expecting us to come and test this level down here. We've been saying it ever since these drops up here, that most likely we are going to head towards something like 841.46. We're just paying attention in this if the 2-hour could cross. Well, was the 2-hour ever able to cross here? No, it wasn't. So we were never in this trade. We were never thinking like, oh, this has to go up, because it never crossed and it never went into positive territory. So once it does cross and go positive, you can see a positive move. But right now, starting to see a little bit of flagging here. You want to look at a 30-minute. Look at that, able to cross up. No divergences down here on the MACD, flatness of the RSI. But this is where we were paying attention to our weekly expected moves. You guys don't think those things get touched? These get touched all the time. It is very, very good to have those weekly expected moves. And NVIDIA's weekly expected move sitting right here. Guess what? We go below that level for a moment, and we buy back up above that important level of 841.46. Okay, so this tells you the options market only priced in a move this far, and we got outside of that. So therefore, you have a 68% chance to come up into this area right here, and it makes total sense. So right now, you have that going on. Looks like this is trying to curl up, and let's see if we can get into positive territory for NVIDIA. It looks like a strong move could be coming, so it's interesting to see NVIDIA is hitting a support. We could see a bounce from this level. AMD we're about to go into, and that one as well looks like it is holding up at support right now. Now, the thing with AMD that's a little bit different is there's two things we're going to go over here. Well, this is getting very, very close to the center line. If we roll over, we can see some negativity and take out this low. That's when we pay attention to the bottom side of our weekly expected move. But as this gets closer and closer to positive territory, what if this just starts to take off? Well, we'd want to pay attention to a 2-hour at that point. And look at this, confirming at the very end of the day, 2-hour divergence. We mentioned this live, so this should have been on your radar. We see that divergence down here. We have the flatness of the RSI down here, coming down a little bit lower on this move right here, but we still have that good divergence here. So if we see a strong move, that 2-hour can go positive, and we could get a big move from AMD. And the SPY and the Qs, they're pricing in a big move for tomorrow. So a big move like this is very well possible, but I want to pay attention to my weekly expected moves. Once we get outside of those, we're trading like water on this channel, moving around the rocks, and we have a ton of rocks in our stream this week. So make sure we are still taking profit, as all of this could be ripped away very quickly, even though this looks bullish. Now, if it is going to continue to be bullish, right, the 2-hour divergences, they like to turn up this daily. If AMD is able to curl up this daily MACD, we very well could see a new high in AMD. I know that's crazy to say. We had divergence up at this level, so it makes sense for us to drop off. We see the divergence, we see the flatness of the MACD, we see the downward move of the RSI telling you, hey, this needs to pull back or, maybe even go into a negative trend. Right now, in a negative trend. But what if this just curled up with some good news and we get that to cross positive territory right before earnings? What if we get very excited before earnings and then that is ripped away? That is something to keep on your radar with AMD. But I just wanted to show you how AMD and NVIDIA both look like they could pop higher, and they want to at some key support levels, while things like Amazon, and we're going to go into Meta, but Amazon and Meta don't look the prettiest. They look like they're tired out. That's exactly what you have to say about Meta at this point. You have a divergence that hasn't confirmed on the daily. It looks a lot like Amazon, and we could be seeing that as a signal it wants to go lower. But right now, what I'm noticing is we are tight in the price action here. We're tight with the Bollinger Band, so a big move is coming. We still have room to the upside for Meta this week, according to our weekly expected moves. So this 2 hour was able to beat down just a little bit here, able to hold up still at higher levels with this support right here. So the fact that we took this back, we were talking about this live, how we had that 15-minute divergence, told you there's a potential double top. Well, once that breaks this, everyone starts talking about that. Maybe some people even took some short positions. And what do? It's a fake out and we come back up. So what if this actually pushes higher? We get some kind of small divergence here. I would mainly pay attention to a 30-minute. Look at that by the center line, wanting to go positive. Maybe recreate that 30-minute divergence, and that's a good hint of what's to come. But maybe that lasts us for a couple of days, okay? Because we do get PPI. PPI came out hot last time, so that's one I'm kind of thinking could break down the market a little bit. But if this sees a surge up with CPI and FOMC, do we kind of mellow out with PPI and get good earnings with the banks? Possibly, and maybe we get a divergence here. So we have a lot to pay attention to, but I just wanted to let you know that nothing has really flipped to bearish at this point. If anything, it's telling you the buyers are still here, and we actually could turn up on this 30-minute for at least Meta and see a positive move, even though the momentum up here is really dying out. So that would tell me, hey, maybe Apple does have that chance to pop. Maybe NVIDIA, maybe AMD, maybe all these things do. And when we go over TLT, that's going to make a lot of sense. So let's do that right now. Let's look at TLT, and let's start from a daily perspective. Okay, so daily perspective, TLT in a falling wedge at this point, getting pretty tight in here, has divergence on the MACD and RSI, so you do have that divergence down at these levels. Now, what if we see this break out? That would mean that the 10-year yield is going to drop off, which tells us that what if CPI is actually good news tomorrow? This is something you really have to pay attention to. What if this double bottom down here, which I'm going to show you on the 2 hour, how there's even more divergences all across here. We have divergence all across here. We have multiple divergence, and we have even a divergence on the 2 hour in the nearest price action, giving you that potential double bottom. And that's even confirming as of this morning. And if we start to break through this level, we can see a good move from TLT. And if you wanted an entry point, well, look at the 30-minute. It gave you that entry point down in this area, right? We see the first dip down. We talked about this maybe potentially creating some kind of divergence at this level. That's exactly what happened. Now we see that actually proven here, and then we see an entry point right at this level right here. This is when I got into this trade. I'm going to take this trade and keep my stop right here at this low, because if this just comes out bad CPI, well, we could tear down again and see those yields go higher. But at this point, you have to say, hey, something here is saying maybe those yields want to pull back even further than where they're at now, while everyone is thinking that CPI might be a little bit hot. What if it just comes in at consensus or something like that? And then we go to extreme levels, and then FOMC says we're still not going to cut these rates. Lastly, I just wanted to show you guys the direction of the VIX, right? The 30-minute able to curl up. What does it do? It gets close to the center line and we rolled down. So we did take out this low. Looks like we could head lower. If we look at a 2 hour, well, we could head lower, that's for sure. But what happens when we get close to the center line? That's what I'm interested in, if we're going to see that positivity for quite some time, or if this is going to come back in. And the reason I'm saying it could come back in, even though these bars are showing volatility kind of drop off, what if this actually gets support at the 200 and we start to head up? But also you have to be aware, what if this daily starts to curl over? If we see prolonged good stuff like good price action, positive price action, then you're most likely going to see this VIX drop off. And then maybe a divergence down here for a double bottom with volatility is what we have to look out for right before earnings. Okay, so I just wanted to show you how volatility dropping off a little bit, but you are still above the 200. You have the 50 getting close to crossing. So we have to be open to the potential for volatility to come back into this market. And it just means trade like water, trade a little bit more carefully, take profit a little bit earlier, and you will be just fine. You don't want to try to call tops at all times. We're just pointing out times to be cautious. Tomorrow is one of those times. And if we set up something like this, this is going to be another one of those times. You just want to trade based on the price action, take your profit, and then one of those times, some kind of bigger pullback, some kind of bigger crash will happen, and then you can make a little bit more money on that one. But as long as we're trading like water, we're not trying to catch the exact top, we will be just fine in this market trading the price action and trading our signals. So the main takeaway here is we have kind of a mixed bag. We have a few stocks that look like they're dying out to the upside, but then we have Apple, Tesla, and even TLT telling us, hey, it kind of looks like CPI might be good news tomorrow. Isn't that interesting? While everyone's saying it will be bad news, I'm saying it actually has the potential to be good news tomorrow. If it is bad news, though, I have my stops in place. I am open to both scenarios because I have no idea what the actual print will be for tomorrow. I have to react to it in real time, just like everyone else. But I just want to say thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for liking, subscribing. You guys are always fantastic. If you need anything, courses or Patreon or anything like that for the weekly ranges, it's down in the description. But seriously, just thank you guys. I look forward to streaming with you guys tomorrow morning. And for the FOMC minutes tomorrow, it is going to be a wild day. This is the starter. The starter pistol has shot off, and now we have to trade like crazy for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday with a bunch of rocks in our stream. Trade carefully out there. I hope you have a great night and all the luck in the world trading tomorrow. Peace.